you can add that onto an object. There's physics, so rigid body makes it actually react with physics, so it'll have weight, and it'll have certain properties to it that an object with physics would have. And then there's a character controller, which is, you use this for, it has a, mostly obviously as the name implies, for characters, because that's certain properties that characters have. So they do have some physics to them, but they don't, for example, like tip over if they're odd shaped or anything like that. Then you have your colliders, so they can interact with the world, and these are a little more complex. We can get into these later. Audio, again, if you want to put an audio source on there. Rendering, these are if you want to make this object also be a camera, you could do that. You could, if you want to make it be a light, you add a light component to it, and all of a sudden it's a light. Now because we're in lit mode here, it darkens everything because the light is actually inside of the object, so you wouldn't actually see anything. So that's what that's doing there. So components are, like I said, they just add functionality to an object. So in this case, let's go ahead and delete a component. So we added a light to this. I don't want the light in there because it's actually darkening everything. Because once you put a light in there, it starts using real lights unless you turn off the lit mode. So let me delete that. So I click on the little gear icon right here and then remove component, and then that's gone. So I guess that's already changed for good. So now if you notice, if I move my camera around, so I want my camera to see that cube I had just found. Actually, I mean sphere. Let me put that at 0, 0, 0, and you can type it in manually and it'll move for you. And then my camera, let's move my camera down so that it actually shows. So you can see my preview right here, showing me what the camera sees that I have selected. And there it is. If I go into game mode, now all of a sudden I have this sphere in my game. Again, you can't really do much right now, but we'll get into functionality in a little bit. Last we have a terrain. This is just another type of game object, but this creates a terrain, and I'll show you in a second what that is. And then window is it's basically all the different windows you can open. In this case, we already have an inspector here, a project, and a hierarchy, but some of these do different things. So you also notice these controls up here. These are these control the game itself. So if you want to play, you just hit play, and then you're in the game mode again. You can pause it, and then you can play and pause at the same time. So if you're, or actually, I don't even think I've ever used this. What is this? Well, I don't know. I honestly have never used this in like the year or so I've been using Unity. But you have your play and your pause. So if you pause it and then play, it'll start the game pause. It's not going to do anything right now, but and then you have your different layers here. I'll get into that later. The one you may want to play with now is your configuration. So you can arrange this any way you want, but there's some layouts that are already pre-made for you here. So there's a 2x3, so two windows, or you have your game and your scene view, and then you have these 3 windows here. 4 split, so you have your 4 views, and then you have your different windows here. These are by default hierarchy, project, and inspector. Those are going to be there in any of the pre-made ones. But here you have a top view, front, and right view all at the same time. So if you look around here and you move it, it's moving from the front and the right. If you move it here, then it's going to be moving only in these axes. So this is similar to a 3D package. If you have a widescreen monitor, this will look better. And then there's a tall mode. Again, widescreen takes advantage of this. And there's a wide mode, which is good for standard 4:3 aspect ratio. And you can move these around. You just click up here and move the window to wherever you want it. You can make it a standalone window if you want, just by dragging it into empty space. Or you can hook it back up, or dock it again, just by dropping it there, and you can resize these and whatever you want. It's fully customizable, whatever you want it to look like. And actually, I don't want it to look like this. If you ever mess it up, just go back to the preset. And there you go. And there's a couple more things here on the game screen. First, you have a few different options on this bar here. You have maximize on play and gizmos, so you can actually show the gizmos while you're playing. And by gizmos, it means these handles here that we had talked about. So let me just show you what that means. So these handles here I'm actually moving right now. Those are the gizmos. So anything you have selected here in the hierarchy will highlight. If you turn off gizmos, it's not going to show that. See? And then stats just shows you a whole lot of information about how your game is running. Frames per second, how many draw calls, how many polygons and your drawing and textures and all that stuff, memory used. All that stuff is shown right here. This is a little more complex, but it's good for optimizing your game. And then up here you have your aspects. So you can do 4:3, 3:2, whoops, widescreen, standalone, free aspect. So free aspect will always fill up this entire window. So actually it's not a good idea to click in there because it gives you a false idea of what is actually in the frame. And that's it for this. This is just getting around Unity. The next tutorial is going to show you a little bit more about creating stuff in here and how to go about achieving certain things, and some more advanced, well, I want to say advanced because it's not really advanced, but a few more in-depth features about the UI and manipulating objects. For now, I just want to show you real quick the example we'll be using. I'm not going to save this thing. So this is a project I made over a couple days for school. Nothing much. There's no graphics or anything like that. I didn't bother much with the way it looks. Actually, if I show you the rifle, it's pretty terrible. The rifle is just made up of primitives. All I did is I took some cubes and stretched them out and attached them to some cylinders, and there you go. So basically, I'll show you how to achieve something similar to this and do it very easily. There's a couple of image effects in here which are only for the pro version, but the basic functionality can be done with any version. So this is a first-person shooter. You see the scope actually shows you what it's looking at, and then you can zoom in. Let's see, I spot a target here. There's a target. Spot him. If I right-click, it zooms in, and you notice in the top left corner there's wind speed, so I have to account for that when I make my shot. And then there goes, and I missed. So I counted a little bit too much. So let's try again. That should be good right there. And it's a hit. So this is really cheesy stuff, but it'll help illustrate some of the examples and some of the stuff that I'm trying to explain. So this is what we'll be working on, and if not something similar, you can see this has got a whole bunch of stuff. I'm actually going to go over a lot of scripting stuff, but those will be companion guides to the editor guide. So the way it'll work is I'll show you how to do all the stuff and setting it up. In a separate video, I'm going to go over the script and exactly what it's doing. So I hope that helps, and I'll see you guys next time.